So hi, my name is Pranav, and this is Alex, and we're both product managers here at Appian. Can everyone hear us okay? You just give me a thumbs up? Okay, cool. Awesome. So we're both product managers here at Appian, and we're really excited to talk to you all today about enterprise visibility with Process HQ. Now, you might be wondering what the difference is between this presentation here about Process HQ and that one right there. And just to clear that up really quickly, we're going to be talking about Process Insights, which is backed by process mining. And we're going to show you how to curate a really pretty and beautiful analysis experience where you can find insights and act on them. And we want you to monitor those insights within Process Insights. And so in order to get into it, what we're going to do today is explore a few use cases, take a look at the data model, and then get right into a few demos to actually visualize what all of this looks like. So let's just go ahead and get started. All right. So I'm sure at one point or another, we've all been to a coffee shop. Now, a coffee shop is, a place you go to in the morning if you need an extra hit of caffeine before going to work, or maybe you just need to go there to enjoy a latte and read a book, right? But for today's presentation, I want us to think about this from the business owner's perspective. Let's say that as a business owner, you're interested in taking a look at your coffee shop and saying, how can I make my coffee shop better? How can I make it more efficient so that I can actually increase profits? Well, if you're going to do that, you might actually choose to explore some of the key processes at your coffee shop. And one of them would be making drinks, right? So there are a wide variety of different drinks that are available to you at a coffee shop. You might have an Americano, a cappuccino, a cortado. There are so many different options. And at first glance, it might look like the process is basically the same thing. You might think, okay, you're basically gonna just brew some espresso, pour it into a cup, maybe add some milk, and do that at different ratios. But actually, if we start to peel back the layers and analyze some of this information, you'll start to see that there's actually a little bit more complexity and really interesting things that we can then analyze and use to make our coffee shop a bit more efficient. And so let's do that. Let's just explore this. So this would be what we call the starting point for a discovered model for making a latte. So in this instance, the barista is actually making a latte, and each of these distinct dots that you see are different steps or activities along this case. So I won't read each one to you, but basically at its core, you are making some coffee, you are steaming some milk, pouring it into a cup, and serving it to a customer. And if we draw a line through it, we're essentially looking at the flow of this case, right? This specific instance of making a latte looks like this. But there are a lot of variations as we start to look at more data. For example, let's say we take another instance of making a latte, and all of a sudden we notice that this step, brewing espresso, actually repeats, right? There's a repetition here. And that might be interesting from a process owner's point of view, because you might think, well, is something wrong with the machine? Or maybe do I need to train my barista a little bit better so they're not making mistakes, right? There are questions you can start to ask, and you can analyze this information to learn more. Let's take a look at a different drink. In this case, we're taking a look at how to make an iced latte. Well, now you're not gonna steam any milk because this is not a hot beverage, but you're actually just gonna add some ice and move along with the same process. Or let's say you're making a vanilla latte. Well, now you're basically taking a look at the same latte flow, but you're adding in one extra step at the end. You're essentially adding flavor, which is that pump of vanilla. But most importantly, you might be making a babychino. And I had no idea what this was before I was making this presentation. And if you leave this presentation with just one thing, I hope it's that you know what a babychino is. Basically, when you go to a coffee shop and you have your kid with you, you can order them a babychino, and all it is some steamed milk with maybe some flavor so that they're not bouncing off the walls with caffeine. And so that's what this process looks like, right? You basically skip all of the steps that are related to brewing that espresso and adding that coffee in. And then when you go ahead and collapse all of those different instances of this business process together, you're gonna get something like this. You start to realize maybe this simple process is actually not so simple. And when you think about this in the context of your organizations and some of the business processes that you might have, you would start to understand why this is so important, right? Being able to visualize what is actually going on as part of your enterprise is extremely valuable. So let's just take a step back real quick and take a look at what Process HQ has to offer. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, there are two key components to Process HQ. The first one is Data Fabric Insights, which is all about visualizing your data and reporting on it. You can create reports and dashboards, and it's really cool and powerful. But what we're focused on today is Process Insights. And Process Insights is all about process mining. We want you to create a process and then use our guided exploration and flows to basically find insights that you can then use to convert into actionable steps. And once you take those steps, you can monitor it all within Process Insights. It's a really cool experience. And so, as I mentioned, we're going to focus on Process Insights. Process Insights takes advantage of your data fabric. So if you're using synced records and if you're using record relationships, you're going to be in a good place to get started. And when you create that process, we're going to help you with guided flows to actually analyze that information and find insights that you can then convert to action. Now, this is a high level of what the lifecycle actually looks like. We want you to prep your data once and use it forever. Essentially, what this means is you create this process by defining what data is actually represented there. You're going to have cases, you're going to have events, and you're going to have a lot of different attributes that actually represent your process, and that would be useful to analyze in Process Insights. Once you have actually created that process, we encourage you to segment your data. So if we take a look at that coffee shop example, you might think that as a business owner, you might have coffee shops in a wide variety of different locations. And so it might make sense to have a view for different regions in the United States where you have coffee shops and analyze your data that way. And when you do that, you can then investigate those inefficiencies, find out what is actually going wrong with your business process and how you can make it better. And as I had mentioned before, you can then turn those insights into actions and then continuously monitor those for improvement within Process Insights. So let's take a look at the data model for a use case and process that might be more similar to what you have at your organization. And that would be financial customer onboarding. And this process is essentially exactly what it sounds like. We're going to onboard a key customer onto our organization. So what you see here is this record type called onboarding cases, and a case record type represents the data that is core to your business process. And as you can see here, you might have things like customer ID or status or who the actual onboarding manager was for that customer, right? There's a lot of different information. And each one of these cases, each one of these cases, follows a certain flow and has a series of events. So it might look something like this, where an instance of customer onboarding might be application received. And then there is a know your customer review. And then you have your financial documents being verified. We encourage you to log all of these different events using our out-of-the-box solution called Record Events that's available to you within the Record Type Designer. It's essentially going to help you format your data correctly and make it compatible with Process Insights to give you a leg up. Now, along with cases and events, you're also going to have a wide variety of attributes that are available to you. And this is all thanks to Data Fabric. If you're using synced record types and you're leveraging those relationships, you're going to be able to pull in all of this information when analyzing your process, which is extremely important. And I want to call out that you can also bring in information from external systems. Thanks to Data Fabric, if you have information stored in Salesforce, for example, where in this case, we have customer information stored, or you might have a document verification process, which in this case, we're using DocuSign for. You can pull that in using record types and relationships and analyze it within Process Insights. So now I want to actually show you what all of this looks like within Process Insights. So this might be your first look, but this is the homepage of Process HQ. And you can see a lot of different objects represented here. So at the top, you have processes, and we're going to dive a little bit more into that because that's what Process Insights is all about. But then you also see things like data sets, and you can see your reports and dashboards that you have created to visualize your data and look at your information. If I flip over to the fourth tab, what you'll see is the data governance page. Now this represents all of the synced record types in your organization that you can use to create business processes. You can also keep track of what is available to you within Data Fabric Insights, but let's focus on the Process Insights story for now. What I want to do is dive right into the process of actually creating something within Process Insights. So let's get into that. So here I am within Process Insights, and I'm just gonna go ahead and click the Add Process button. Now, we've already talked about our case record type, in this case, onboarding cases. So I'm gonna select that and click Next. Now, for my event record type, I'm gonna select onboarding events, and I'm going to simply click Next. Great. Now I'm taking a look at all of the case data that is available to me. Now, as I'm taking a look here, I notice that timestamps aren't particularly useful for my analysis, so I'm gonna deselect that. Then I'm just going to check off a few fields from my Salesforce-backed customer record type, because I know that this is gonna be useful information to analyze later down the line. And obviously I can redefine this later as well. Scanning through some of the fields, I noticed that this column is called status. And status is a bit ambiguous, so I'm gonna make that a little bit more specific and just call that onboarding status. Great, nice and easy. And then I'm gonna go to my fifth column here, and I'll notice that net worth is a numerical attribute, and it would make much more sense to slice and dice that by specific buckets. So we offer no-code tools for data prep right within Process Insights, and one of these is going to be groups based on range. We're going to create a custom field that's going to bucket this net worth within three specific fields, or three specific buckets, excuse me. So you're going to have small, which represents customers that are fewer than 500,000. Then you've got medium, customers less than 1 million. And you've got large for any remaining values. I can really quickly test to make sure that this all looks good to go. And once I've done that, I'll go ahead and click Next. I can give this custom attribute a name. In this case, I'm going to call it grouped net worth. And I will skip providing a description for now. Great. Everything looks pretty good with this case data, so I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the event data. Now, event data is fairly specific in what it needs. And I know that IDs are not going to be useful here, so I'm just gonna deselect those because they're not gonna add any value to me. And that's about it. Event data is looking good to go, and as I said before, those are your key steps, so we're gonna analyze that. The process name is filled out, and Process Insights does some very clever data prep and cleanup for me to make sure that my data is good to go. I can add a description to my process and schedule any updates if necessary to keep that data up to date as I look at my process. And lastly, I'm just going to add another analyst to my process using security here, Kelsey Ross. And that's about it. I'm gonna hit Add Process, and I'm going to move on. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Alex to talk a little bit more about the analysis experience and the value that you can get.
Great, thanks Pranav. All right, so we have taken a look at the steps that you go through to make your process, but now I want to take a look at what you actually get, what the value you get from creating that process. So to do this, we're going to switch our persona a little bit in our head here. We've been looking at what the developer and what we call the data steward might be doing here to set up your process. But from here on out, what we're going to be looking at is through the lens of a business user. So this tool is available to everyone in your organization that you want to give access to. And as we've been talking about before, it's no code and it's a guided experience. So we want this to empower users within your organization to be able to explore their data, both in Data Fabric Insights and in Process Insights. So we're going to walk through the capabilities we have to explore our process by the automatic visualizations we provide you, how you can segment your data to better support the analysis you want to do, all the various automatic capabilities we have for analyzing your data, as well as the ways that you can add custom measurements to your process. All right, starting out with visibility. So some of you might have seen screenshots like this so far in the keynote this morning. And this is one of the most exciting parts about Process Insights. This is what we called the discovered model. So similar to what Pranav walked you through earlier with the coffee shop, you can get this kind of visualization for your processes in your organization. And what this offers you is the ability to see exactly how your processes are operating in the real world. So when you build your process, you might have an idea of what that model looks like. You may have drawn it up on a whiteboard when you were starting to build the process. You may have implemented a process model that you think shows what's actually happening. But this is actually what has happened in the real world. This is looking at that historical data to tell us what's happened. So on the top here, what we're seeing, those nodes represent the activities that have happened. So things like our KYC review, our document verifications, and when it was started and completed. And the lines between them represent the flows of our process. So we can see that the colors here represent how long some of those things are taking. So those blue lines are fast. Those red lines are a bit slower for us. And this could help us immediately identify some areas of the process that could be a bottleneck that we want to look into. So what we're looking at here, you'll notice it says basic. So this is a basic version of your process. What we've done is kind of intelligently hidden some of the complexity of your process to give you a high-level overview of what's going on. But we want to see everything that's going on because Appian knows about it. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to the full view. So this is going to show every possible flow that has happened in your process previously. And we can see there's a lot more complexity here. And this complexity might be warranted. We're making enterprise-grade applications, so there's expected to be some complexity here. But some of that complexity may be unexpected, and what this is going to do is help bring visibility to that complexity so you can identify if you want to take action here to improve those things. So I can notice here that there are things like loops happening. We're going backwards in the process and redoing work. I can see sometimes we're skipping over steps, and that might be unexpected. So there's a lot here we could look at to potentially improve our process operations. Now, what we're looking at so far here is actually just the process for onboarding in Appian. So most of the process is orchestrated within Appian. But as Pranav mentioned, part of our onboarding process happens in an external system. We're using DocuSign to do our document verification steps. And we want to be able to pull that data in so that we can see the complete end-to-end process. We don't just want to look at the pieces that are in Appian. We work across multiple systems in our enterprise. So what we can do is, thanks to the data fabric, we can pull in that data using those record relationships and our integration capabilities to those other systems so that that data can be on the same playing field as the rest of our data that's already in Appian. And once that's there, we can pull that data into our process so we can see the complete end-to-end flow. So looking at that here, I know this is going to be a little hard to see, so I'm going to zoom in it's just a second here. But what I want to highlight here is that we have now introduced a number of new steps that have taken place in that external system. So what that looks like here is we've taken the financial documents verified step, which was previously just a step that we had in Appian once the process was completed in DocuSign. So we noticed here before that there was a loop happening around this step. And so if we look at the 5 new events that are actually happening in that system, we can see that that loop is still existing around it. But we get a little bit more insight to what's actually going on in that system now. So I can see, for example, that we're skipping an activity sometimes, or with the duration numbers that we have up there, I can see that when we authenticate a document to when we're actually marking it as reviewed is taking 4 hours. And that's something that maybe as a process owner, I know that shouldn't take that long. So that might be something I want to follow up on. And I'll show you in a bit about how we can investigate that further. All right, let's walk through the other capabilities that we have to explore our process. So I mentioned segmenting your data. As a process owner of this financial onboarding process, I know we have 2 kind of major segments of our customers. We have our corporate clients, and we also have our personal investors. And the process for those 2 different types of clients looks a little bit different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a view. And this view is going to only look at my personal investors. So I'm going to choose the individual and joint account types. And that now shows me I'm looking at only 35% of my overall cases. And this will look at a more cohesive set of data. Additionally, I only want to look at the approved cases because I want to compare apples to apples between these cases. I don't want to look at ones that have been rejected or that are still open because that might kind of skew the data. So now I've made a view that's going to be looking at my approved personal investors. So I'll give that a name. And because this is a collaborative space, I want to make sure it's descriptive so any other analysts that come in here can understand what this view is and how to use it for themselves. And now that I've created it, we've automatically filtered that down for you, and I can see the filters that are being applied within this view at the top. Additionally, I can apply a time range here. We're defaulting to 12 months, and I think that that's a good amount of time for the analysis we want to do here. Appian is providing a number of default KPIs about your process, including the number of cases we're looking at, the average and median case duration, as well as the automation rate, so how frequently things are being automated within our process. we have the process diagram that we've been looking at. However, in this situation, we've actually kind of filtered down that process diagram to just these personal investors. So it might look a little bit different. And I can even interact with this model to get more details about those individual segments that look interesting to me. So for example, I clicked on this KYC review to financial review step here. I can see more details about that sequence, and I can see how it compares to other sequences in the process. And this might be a really interesting launching point for me to start an investigation where I could learn more about what's going on. But I'm going to come back to investigations in just a minute. Continuing on here, we have more details about our process. So case attributes are all of those fields that we brought in from our related record data at the beginning when Pranav was creating the process. So we can learn about our customers, the regions they're in, what kind of accounts they're working with, and information about those things thanks to the data fabric. So here I clicked on region, and what I can see is all the values of the various regions that we work with. I can see the case duration, how long it's taking for those processes to be handled in those regions, and how frequently they're happening. Additionally, we get some information about trends for our case counts and durations. All right, so that's all of the automatic behavior that you get as soon as you create your process. We didn't do any further setup to get all of those interesting metrics. But we also have custom KPI capabilities that allow you to measure the things that are important to you. So we have 4 different kinds of KPIs. We have count KPIs that allow you to count various things like the number of activities or sequences or the number of activities happening. I could set an SLA for my process. I could count my own specific durations between 2 events maybe, or I can aggregate certain numeric attributes that I might have about our process, like the average of the net worth across a certain case. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and create a count KPI here as an example. And what I'm interested in here is the sequence that goes from our KYC review step backwards to the application received step. So this is interesting to me because this represents a rework happening in the process. We're going backwards. Something happened in the KYC review that means we had to restart in the process. So this is obviously undesired. We don't want this to be happening. So we're going to count how frequently this is occurring and view that as a percentage so that we understand how frequently this is happening within our process. And by creating this as a KPI, it's something I can monitor over time. So again, because this is collaborative, I'm going to go ahead and give it a useful name and description so that others who view this KPI know what we're calculating here. I can apply this to various views we have within the process, and I can view this with a trend. Like I mentioned, I want to keep an eye on this, and I'll notice that's going up. So that's going up. That's something we're going to want to look at. So what I can do here as well is I can pin this KPI to the summary tab. So for those KPIs that are particularly interesting to me, I can make sure that those are visible along with those default metrics on my main view here. So we've gone through a lot here. This is a lot of capabilities that you get automatically when you create your process. We can do this to help us understand how our process is operating in the real world and measure the things that are important to us. But this is just the tip of the iceberg about what Process Insights has to offer. As you may have seen this morning in the keynote, what we're really excited about is our investigation capabilities. Our investigation capabilities are built on top of AI and data algorithms that help you identify bottlenecks in your process. And the goal here is to really uncover insights that are actionable so you can make improvements to your organization. So let's dive into what an investigation looks like. I might have noticed here on the main screen that my average case duration is 13 days, and that's a pretty long time. So I think we could do better in improving that. So I'm going to start working with Appian to figure out how we can improve it. When I click Start Investigation, what this is taking me into is a flow that's telling me how I can reduce my cycle time. And we're automatically bubbling up the factors that are influencing your case duration the most. So I can see that when the country is Spain, my cases are 6 days and 17 hours slower, which has a potential savings of 7,000 days. So clicking into that, I get a lot more details about this specific attribute. I can see how it compares to other countries, and notice here that Spain is in fact a lot slower than my other countries, so that's going to be interesting for us to look into. And I get more details, things like the trends. I can see how it's impacting our overall duration trends. I can compare it to the distribution of those cases. And as well, at the very bottom, we'll give you actually specific cases and events that have happened, so that if you want to follow up with a specific case that happened that was particularly slow, you can. Now this looks interesting, so I'm going to go ahead and add this to my insight. I think this is something that we could probably improve, so I want to keep digging further. I can continue investigating other attributes that might combine to create a more narrow scope for me to look into, but I'm going to take a look at the sequences. So this is going to show me the parts of the process specifically that are slower. So we're only looking at the Spain cases here, And we can see that the financial to a financial review step here takes 4 days per occurrence, and that has a potential saving of 3,500 days. So that's a little smaller than the 7,000, but this is a more specific thing that we could potentially take action on. And you'll notice that financial review to financial review is a loop. We're doing the step multiple times, and so obviously rework is bad, but the fact that it's taking an additional 4 days is probably something we could actually improve. Why is it taking so long to pick up this work after it's being reassigned? So I'm gonna add that to my insight as well. And this seems like something that's actually pretty actionable. I can go talk to the team and understand why we're redoing this work and maybe what we can do to improve that to drop that time. Because if we can do that, we can save our organization 3,500 days, make our customers happier because they're getting onboarded quicker, and reduce that bottleneck in Spain. So I'm gonna save this insight. And what this is gonna do is create a summary view of that insight we found. So I can see those potential savings that we had, and I can get a lot more information about the various metrics that we've been looking at. I can see those individual cases, again, in case I want to follow up on a specific case and talk to the team that was working on those. And I can visualize that with the process diagram in those specific instances. That was pretty quick, but you can imagine now all of the various ways that you can perform investigations on your process. We followed one path there. We followed the things that look interesting to us the first time around, but you can imagine all of the other ways that you could investigate that as well. Maybe the second attribute looked interesting to us. And this is where, as a business user, your business context comes into play. We're not just automatically moving you through the top factors that are there because you have the business context to choose what's important to you. You can decide that, maybe this top attribute that's being suggested to you is expected within your business, and maybe it's not something you could improve, but you're trying to look for actionable insights. So that's what we're trying to guide you towards. All right, once you have found an insight, we want you to be able to take action on that. And thankfully, you're using Appian. So Appian is a great place to make process improvement. We have a number of capabilities that allow you to automate things in your process. So you could use AI to help extract or classify information. You could use rules to create better business logic that might make the process flow smoother. I could use RPA to integrate with any legacy systems where maybe manual work is happening. I can use process models to make business change. And in our example here, this might be where we look to make a change here because we had a loop within the financial review, and that was taking 4 days to get picked up again. So maybe what we want to do here is escalate the tasks that are being reassigned, or maybe our queuing process isn't working as well as we thought it was. So this is an area where we can use process models to make quick iterative changes to our process. Additionally, maybe we just need to make a behavior change, and maybe that the UX of our UIs isn't helping our users figure out the right work that's prioritized for them. So again, we can use Appian's simple UI tools to make quick changes that improve the user experience. All right, once we've made a change, now we want to actually monitor that that change is having the impact we expected it to. So Process HQ is a wonderful place to investigate and monitor the changes that you've made. This morning, we talked about it being your mission control, and I think that that's a great analogy for what this is. This allows you to get visibility into your business processes and all of the related data and entities you have around it. So we've looked at process insights and the ability you have to make those custom KPIs to measure the things that are important to you, but you can additionally use data fabric insights to build those custom reports and dashboards. Showing this slide again that we showed at the beginning, I want to reiterate the two key capabilities we have in Process HQ. We have data fabric insights that allows you to build reports and take action on that data. And then we have process insights, which allows you to explore your process. And all of this is built on top of the data fabric, which means that all of your data that you have across the enterprise is easily accessible within this space. And most importantly, this workspace is available to business users. This is a space that we want people to be able to self-service the questions that they want to learn about, the processes that they want to uncover details about. We want to make this empower all users at your company to be able to have access to something like this. And obviously all of this is secured through the data fabric as well. So, you can give access to a lot of people and know that they're only going to have access to the things that they should. So to summarize about Process Insights, again, it's built on top of the data fabric. So it really brings an unparalleled visibility into your enterprise through the visualizations that we provide you about your process and the metrics that you can create. We have a guided exploration and analysis experience that allows you to find insights and take action on those so that you can improve your organization. Process HQ is something we're really excited about. We can't wait for you guys to get your hands on it and see what you're able to uncover. We see that there is a lot of potential here for improvement, and hopefully getting access to that data empowers you to do that. Thank you guys for coming today. Please talk to your sales team about getting access to Process Insights. You can email that email there, insights-kickstart@appian.com, if you're interested in getting early access to this and starting to use it right away. The product team will be there to work with you on that. You can visit our Process Insights booth and the innovation showcase over there. There's a live demo there. You can explore it more, ask further questions, and you can fill out that survey there. That'll help us a lot as well. Again, I'm Alex, this is Pranav. We'll be down here at the bottom if you have any questions afterwards here. We'd love to talk to you all. Thank you so much.